Well, I'll go ahead and start. Mark Gentry is going to join us here shortly. What I wanted to do today is kind of get back to you from where we were yesterday, kind of different time, different place, different circumstances. But yesterday, when we finished our press conference yesterday, I had a meeting then with the Illinois Department of Public Health. They came in yesterday at 11. I think they left the district last night about 6 o'clock. We went through the ARES reports, the IDEAL reports. We went through our management plan that we have, asbestos management plan we have in place over at Chittix. We reviewed drawings from 1984, 1994, 1997, and 1999. All of those with either abatement, as we talked about yesterday in 84, where we actually went through and scraped the ceilings. Then we talked about 94, 97, because those were the years that we added the windows. And then we talked about our most recent work that was done in 99, which was an addition onto Chittix. The addition onto Chittix is not the same material that we have currently in the other area and the other parts of the building. What we're able to come up with yesterday is basically kind of an odd position that we spent most of that time talking about. We had a position where our two consultants, ARES and IDEAL, said that the air samples, the stagnant air samples, were clear and clean, and that we could occupy the building. And we had the Illinois Department of Public Health say that the only way that they could allow us to go back in is if we did an aggressive air sample. And the difference between a static air sample and an aggressive air sample is simply the aggressive air sample is one where they actually bring in box fans and they bring in leaf blowers and they stir up the atmosphere to the point that you basically get things a point where everything's been moved around. And we as a district talked about that possibility. Our consultants advised us against it. They found that doing that would probably stir up more issues and problems than we had currently. As everybody understood from yesterday's conversation, we have a plan in place to go to new construction and new construction renovation over the summer. And so we are willing, at the end of our renovation construction, we're willing at that point in time to do the aggressive air sampling, because we will then have fixed our issues, have got everything re-encapsulated like it's supposed to be, and we're able to then do that with assurances that we would pass that. So today then we got a letter mid-morning, 9:30 time frame, basically from the Illinois Department of Public Health, stating that we needed to evacuate the building. Yesterday they talked about that process, and I assured them yesterday that we did have a relocation plan in place and that we were willing to move to that if that's what they deemed necessary. From that process of having a relocation plan in place, we then this morning began to go to work again on getting that accomplished. Very honestly, the relocation plan has been about a week's worth of work. We, after last week, we got to that point, we decided that we needed to begin to go into full mode of what it would be like to move. I think there was points yesterday in our conversation on the phone call where they were only talking about 10 rooms. The district has never talked about anything less than a full evacuation. I don't see how you can close 10 and not the rest of the building. So we were always talking about a full evacuation or a relocation, and that's kind of what we chose to do. There was no reason for us to leave anyone in there. We can go straight from now into the construction phase. It'll give us the timeliness we need to be able to get that accomplished. So that was kind of how we were planning. Again, when they put in a note or letter immediate, I would never send kids home early from school today, right now, at 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I wouldn't do that in a snowstorm. We need to notify parents when we're going to release them early, and they need to be prepared to have their children come home to an open house, an opportunity to do that. So the order will go in effect tomorrow. Tomorrow we will not have school for students on Thursday, Friday, and Monday, so we're taking 3 days and giving the students off for 3 days. That will not be used against them or against us as a district or against the building. So we will have the students off on Thursday, Friday, and Monday.
For Chittick.
Chittick only. And parents were notified of that just recently. The other side is that we are going to ask the teachers to report here in the morning. We'll debrief with them here in the morning, talk to them about their assignments. I hope we'll have some rooms available for them. And then primarily Friday and Monday, we'll give them the opportunity to go to their new classrooms and to begin to get themselves prepared and ready for Tuesday. On Tuesday, we have chosen to deliver the students back to Chittick again. We'll not enter the building. We'll create shuttle service available out front so that students coming on the bus or through the bus lane will get on a shuttle bus. They'll then be shuttled to 7th grade again, to Evans, 8th grade to Kingsley, and then the 6th graders will probably just continue to ride their bus on over to Field. And so we got 6th graders going to Field, we got 7th graders going to Evans, and we got 8th graders going to Kingsley. They'll be in school then from Tuesday, March 6th through the balance of the school year. So they will stay in those sites and places through the balance of the spring. Everybody knows this is the month of ISATs. We have rearranged our ISATs so that they will be able to take their ISAT testing in their new sites in the second week of the window that we have through ISBE to give those tests. We understand and know this is a major operation that has to be changed. 660 students are affected. There's probably somewhere around 70 faculty and staff members that are going to be affected from this. We have already begun to look at operations. We'll have a secretary at Field. We'll have an extra secretary at Kingsley. We'll have an extra secretary at Evans. There will be one of our Chittick's staff. Our principals will divide the 3 buildings up between them. Counselors will do the same. We'll reassign our food service staff and our custodial staff to meet the needs of the new buildings where the students are going to go. It's again very quick, very timely, but it's something we think is in the best interest of our unified students. We're probably being as proactive with this as we possibly can. We feel like having a second consulting firm come in to verify the results and also to give us a second opinion is above and beyond. And I think that both the Illinois Public Department of Health and also our consultants and others would tell you that Unifive has done their part to try to maintain and keep the safety of the students at the utmost.
What are some of the issues in acclimating the students to those new buildings? What classrooms will they go to? Will it be in gyms? Obviously, those buildings are already mostly occupied.
You know, the good news is we just built a new junior high school, and we used to house students in 3 buildings. And so Kingsley we need 7 8th grade classrooms. We happen to have seven classrooms at Kingsley. We happen to need 7 at Evans, and if you remember right, we built Evans to the point we have an extra pod available there. And at a Field, we have had our developmentally special ed services program there the last 2 years. All of the old classrooms at Field are still available to us, plus the front 2 kindergarten areas that were there before. We just happen to be at the right place at the right time to be able to have other places for them to go. I would also tell you that because we haven't got rid of all of our modulars, we also have 6 modulars available at Parkside. We have another 4 classrooms or 2 modulars at Hoos. And so if any of these arrangements aren't exactly what we want or what we need, we have other places to go if we need to. At this point in time, Charlie, I don't think we have any desire or need at this point to look at gymnasiums. I think that the classroom spaces are not going to be their home. You know, they're where they're coming from, but I think they're going to be able to function and sustain the fourth quarter in their new classrooms.
The Illinois Department of Public Health tells me that they get maybe 2 or 3 of this kind of case per year where it's a problem with an old abatement project. And their policy ought to be well known. They said when they were in first contact with you last week, they made their likely policy recommendation clear to you, and you chose to go with what the consultants were saying, and then their actual recommendation of closing those 10 rooms came out this morning. In deference to you, you didn't know precisely what that would be until they came up with it, but you knew what it was likely to be. Why did you choose to take the guidance from the consultant instead of their likely, the Department of Public Health's likely policy?
They weren't available to yesterday.
Really?
The Department of Public Health was, on the Thursday call you're referring to, we were on a conference call with them. On that Thursday conference call, we asked them to come to the site to actually see it, because in essence what they were doing is making the call from Springfield. And we said, we think it's in your best interest and our best interest for you to come on site and to see what the actual situation is. And so last night after 4 o'clock, 4:30-ish, their consultant they sent down put on his suit and his respirator and went in and did a physical actualization of what was actually there. We had made a recommendation to them, and the recommendation that we had made to them, and we asked for their consideration in that time that you're elapsing or talking about, we had asked if there's any way that we could caulk basically the holes or the cracks that we've been referring to with this new installation of windows. We asked if we could do that and have that done first, and then we were willing to do the forced air or the aggressive air sample. Again, both of my consultants said, you know, you probably shouldn't do that, because in what happens from that is you further contaminate. And in our case, I think we were looking out for the best interests of our teachers and our students, because there's a lot of personal effects in those classrooms, and to go in and do an aggressive air sample would have disturbed, possibly, hopefully, all the things that were in those classrooms. So I think we made the right decision. I don't know that we made it in the timeliness that you know, the Illinois Department of Public Health would have wished we would have, but I felt like that they needed to come here and spend some time with us and to go through the building like they did yesterday. And you know, that was the first time we saw them.
So you're saying that, you know, they said this is what we're likely going to say. You said, come see it before you tell us and make sure.
It's exactly right. And I think the point of it is that there was never any answer different than what was there last Thursday. Is you have to do, before we will approve this, you have to do this aggressive air sample. And again, I think we have made the choice that we would just as soon do that when we're done with our construction versus now, because of the damage it may further do to the rest of the building. Because right now, as they've defined it, although I would define it bigger than that, they've defined these 10 rooms. The point of it is if it's only those 10 rooms and we, whatever, stir the air up in those, it then sends that off out into the rest of the building as well. And for us, you know, if it's those 10 rooms and we can clean those up, but we're going to go through the whole building. I mean, this is a whole project. I think everybody was here the other day, but in essence, our summer construction is to go in and to encapsulate this gap that we have between the new windows and the ceiling and wall, and we know how to do that. We have had the opportunity. We were looking at a short-term fix by putting just a caulking or a paste up there at this point. we have a long-term solution that has been met the architects and the regional superintendent and the Illinois State Board's approval, and we want to move to that. We're going to paint the surface of the old popcorn ceiling to give it more strength and protection as well. And then we're going to paint the classrooms, and we're going to put the carpet down, which we've done to help encapsulate the floor tile. I think the one thing observation that I've heard about is that they were equally looking at the amount of floor tile that are cracked or missing, and so getting all that back down before we put the carpet down. The carpet's just like we have in this room. We ought to be able to be okay with that. So.
Well, Gary, if I can ask you a question about, do you think the Department of Public Health is being overly cautious here? Do you think it's, do you disagree with their assessment that an evacuation isolation is the way to go?
I think we have to do what they think is in the best interest of the public safety. So, I mean, let's go along with it. It gives us time to get our work done. It gives us a chance to make it right inside the buildings. There's nothing wrong with their recommendation. I just, when you hire consultants and you hire people in your district, you tend to think they have the ability to help make equal recommendations. Those two just didn't agree. That being IDEO and Aries did not agree with the Illinois, the Illinois Department of Public Health. As a superintendent, I'm not going to say which do you believe. Let's just vacate and do our job and get ourselves safe again, and let's move on. I mean, that's the way I felt about it. And I felt like that, back to Charlie's question, I knew that when I walked out of the meeting on Tuesday, when I met with the Chittick staff, that's when I started making plans to relocate. That's when I immediately got Jim Braxick involved and said, Jim, you need to get busy and find out where we got classrooms in the district in case this happens. So I think we were trying to be positive and proactive, and again, we're going to follow the rules. We don't have any reason not to. And if it's in the best interest, let's move forward. And I'm going to tell you that this district and these teachers and our maintenance staff and all will put a great effort forward in these 3 days and over the weekend, and we'll be ready for Tuesday. We probably won't have all the things ironed out, but by the time we get to spring break, I think we'll have everything up and running, and it'll feel like hopefully it'll feel like we're back to school and back doing things we're supposed to be doing, and we'll have time then to get the building ready and move back into the building in the fall.
So, given that IDPH says 0 level of asbestos is the only safe level, do teachers yank all of their materials like it's summer as of tonight, or what?
We've already talked about that with them, Charlie, being that this isn't any different than it was when we box up for the summer. What'll happen when they leave their classrooms today, tonight, tomorrow, kind of a time frame, we will have asbestos cleaners come into every one of those classrooms. They'll go through every bit of the stuff that's in those classrooms. They will clean those classrooms. So if it's a personal effect or one of these microphones or my file cabinet, they'll clean it. Once they got it clean and where they want it to be, they'll place those outside in the hallway, and then we'll then move those into our pods. And so what we're asking teachers to do this evening is to get their personal effects together so that they can move on to the next classroom. What we're asking students to do is Dana happened to have available the tote bags, and so she happened to have about 700 of them, which I thought was kind of ironic. They're the kind of the recyclable tote bags, and so tonight when the kids go home, they're going to take their textbooks, their tennis shoes, their gym shorts, or whatever, and they're going to go home with them. They'll keep them at their house over the weekend, and then Tuesday when they start back, they can bring their tote bag and their book bag and whatever else they need to start on Tuesday. And I just think there's been a lot of effort and time, short time, but a lot of time and effort put into figuring out how we're going to do it, and we'll be fine on Tuesday. Tuesday will be a pretty big deal. We've talked about how can we get the parents involved to let them know that they can visit or come visit the new sites and places we're going to place kids. I think they'll be interested in knowing where those are. We're talking through how that might happen, but I think it's important for parents to feel comfortable where their kids are going to go to school since they're not going to get to go to Chittick's.
So is this relocation plan for the rest of the school year?
Yes, it
I
is.
just want to be clear.
Yes, it
From
is.
Tuesday, these 600 and some kids are going to new schools.
Right.
Okay.
And there are some other buildings in Unit 5 that are the same age, 50 years, that have that abatement. Are you doing extra testing in those schools as well, just to?
You know what the good news is, Phyllis, is that those are all of our renovation schools.
Oh, okay.
You know, so when you talk about that list that you're talking about Glen, Oakdale, Hudson, Fairview, Kingsley, and I believe you're talking about Chittix. And the only one of those that hasn't been renovated by Unit 5 is Chittix. And so all of those renovations, when they were finished, they did the air sampling that went along with that. And if you remember, Phyllis, on those elementary renovations, I mean, we literally took the outside wall out and we framed up new windows, we put new ceiling tile in, we encapsulated all the tile. And so we went through those just like we'll do this particular time. And in both situations, we had the clearance to be able to go in. And what we will do is when we get done with the Chittix project, then we have to go through this clearance aspect of it. And if we test the way we think we will, there should be no problem, and we'll be able to start back in the fall.
Will
Gary,
the
if I-
buses continue, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Will the buses continue to go to Chittix first and then take the students?
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to our transportation system and to the parents and everybody to change up bus routes at this time of the year. It's just easier for us to shuttle to Chittix and then to go forward. I just think it would be very confusing if we tried to reroute 660 kids. If they know their routes, they know their times, they know their places. Really, honestly, to get over to Field, it's going to be less than 5 minutes. To get to Kingsley, it'll probably be maybe 10 minutes at the max. Our long ride will be down to Evans, and I'm sure that somebody in here is going to ask, so what does that do to the school day of the kids at Chittix? It means that they're going to have bus rides that'll take up some of their time. Our emphasis is to teach their core curriculum classes. 7 hours and 15 minutes is their normal day. They certainly meet all the state minimums of 300 minutes of instruction a day. We're in good shape on that. They just may not get a full PE period or a full art period or music period, or we still have to give everybody a half-hour lunch. And lunches, by the way, are going to be able to be provided at Evans and at Kingsley, so we aren't going to have to do that. We will have to satellite some brown bags into the sixth graders at Field. But again, all those things are logistical and workable, and we're in the process.
Do you think all the activities that happen at a junior high, and when I think about the time frame, it's kind of like a spring semester, and all the activities that happen in that, do those make the transition as well in terms of clubs and sports and bands? And
Good question. Very honestly, the good news out of this is the factor that wrestling and volleyball regionals are like next week. So junior high wrestling and volleyball are almost over, they're very close to over. And really the only major sport we have in the spring is track. And they didn't have any home track meets. So again, if we're riding buses and we're going back and forth to Chittix, then technically they could get off the bus and go to track practice at Chittix, and they wouldn't have to get to go in the building, but they could go ahead and participate in their track program, and their track coaches could meet them there. As far as the other one, Noah or Jacob, that's a little bit more difficult because simply we're going to have to work really hard as to how we get everything, all those extras in, band, music, orchestra. Jim and I have had some talks about could band, music, and orchestra join in at Evans or at Kingsley, and we that's why we put the 7th and 8th graders there, is simply because possibly they could just join in with those three areas. Do we have enough room to be able to take all those on? That's part of the equation we're going to have to work on. High schoolers taking the honors geometry, we'll be able to bring them back to the junior highs like we have. Students that are taking foreign language will still get foreign language in 8th grade. We'll continue those just as we did. What are those things that we're probably missing? I believe Jim and I talked that maybe there's a drama play that happens in the spring that 2 of the 3 junior highs are doing. I think they had plans to do one. That probably won't be able to be possible, but
We've
Did you? Good.
Parkside has already done theirs, so we think that's gonna be fine. That's what he just said. Drama is good.
Good.
This is not good.
You got some real life drama here.
So Gary, if the Department of Public Health, if they think that the classrooms affected are hazardous now, it would make sense that they would think back in November, they would have thought the same. Why did you wait from November to mid-February to bring Department of Public Health into the discussion?
I think you know the answer to that from yesterday. I mean, very seriously, we didn't know whether we were talking about potting soil yesterday and I mean, that was what became really clear in our meeting with Illinois Department of Public Health. We really didn't know where the source was, and we spent a lot of time trying to figure it out because we couldn't figure out where it would be coming from.
So what's the harm in engaging with the Department of Public Health before you know what the source is?
Well, again, they don't. That's not their job. That's not what they do. They do not try to find the source for you. They are regulatory in nature, and so the point of it is when we finally got to the bottom of the source and we figured out those situations, then I think at that point in time I contacted Mark after one of our Tuesday meetings and just said, let's call the Illinois Department of Public Health and see what they are with this solution, because we were trying to find the source. And so I don't know that we were trying to stay in there longer or put anybody in danger. I think we were trying to figure out where it was coming from because we had no idea where it was coming from. And so I don't think it was, again, we were just trying to do our own investigation. That's exactly, though, Ryan, why we added up why we got the second consultant in, because kind of the first one said, we're not sure. We don't know where the source would be. So that's when we hired the second consultant to come in and do a more conclusive investigation of where the source was. The Illinois Department of Public Health, they don't do that. They don't have the capacity to do it. One, and two, they prefer not to get into that part of it.
Have you got concerns about parents about the health just when they've heard this? Have you helped their children?
You know what, and I'm not, this is a one-day total, and today could change all of those totals, but I think 4 or 5 emails and questions yesterday from the majority. I mean, most parents understand and know what asbestos is and are equally concerned as we are. Most people were just wanting to know more about what could happen if this doesn't work.